My daughter looked straight at me across the kitchen table and said, "Hurry up and die already." No hesitation, no shame, just those 5 words, tossed like scraps to a dog. I sat very still, hands wrapped around a cup of tea that had long gone cold. At 74, I thought I had heard every cruelty life could throw at me. But nothing prepares you for hearing it from the mouth you once fed with a spoon, the body you once rocked to sleep. I didn't answer her. Silence can be sharper than any reply. Vanessa shifted in her chair, impatient, tapping her manicured nails against the wood. She was 46, successful by appearances, a real estate agent with a new car every other year, a wardrobe full of expensive suits. But behind that shine was rot. I had been covering her debts for over a decade, writing checks for temporary gaps that never closed, paying school fees for my granddaughter when Vanessa claimed she was too stretched. Always stretching, never enough. And now she sat in my kitchen, in my house, the same house her father, Colin, and I had worked half our lives to buy, telling me to leave this world quicker. As if I were a bill she couldn't wait to tear up. I rose without a word, rinsed my cup, and left her at the table. My joints complained with each step, but I moved with purpose. Upstairs, in the cedar chest at the foot of my bed, were the documents Colin and I had signed years ago. Our joint will, the trust papers we had once considered, the durable power of attorney I had foolishly handed to Vanessa when I broke my hip 2 years back. I laid them out on the quilt like pieces of a puzzle, and for the first time in years, the picture was clear. I was done being her safety net. By evening, I had called Harley Briggs, my attorney of 20 years. His voice was calm, familiar, the kind of tone that steadies you even when your insides quake. "Ruth," he said, "you're absolutely within your rights to revoke every authorization. We'll draft a new will, ironclad, with a no contest clause. If Vanessa tries to fight it, she'll lose everything." The next morning, I phoned Richard, the manager at my bank. "Suspend all automatic transfers linked to Vanessa's accounts," I instructed, "and freeze the line of credit she's been drawing against." His pause was brief, but telling. He had seen the withdrawals, the pattern of quiet siphoning I had chosen not to notice. "Of course, Mrs. Allison. We'll begin immediately." The timing was cruel, but fitting. Colin's funeral was set for Saturday. My estranged husband had died after years of silence between us. Vanessa was already parading herself as the grieving daughter, angling for sympathy. I decided that day the funeral would also become my stage, not for drama, but for truth. I drafted a letter, 3 pages long, typed neatly and signed. It was not spiteful. It was precise. Names, numbers, decisions. Who was removed? Who remained? Where the assets would go? My granddaughter Maya, and the Blue Haven hospice that had nursed Colin in his last days when Vanessa was too busy closing deals to visit. Friday night, I pressed the envelope flat and slipped it into my purse. I sat at the dining room table staring at the clock as the house ticked around me. Colin's picture watched from the mantel. "You always said I was too soft," I whispered. "Well, I won't be soft tomorrow." Sleep did not come easily. I saw Vanessa's sneer in every shadow, heard her words like a refrain. "Hurry up and die already." But in the early hours, with the birds just starting their songs, I felt something loosen in me. It was not peace yet, but something close. Resolve. The morning of the funeral was gray, fitting for what was to come. I dressed in a black suit that still fit, pinned Colin's old cufflink to my lapel like a talisman, and tuck the envelope into my handbag. When the time came, I would stand. I would read. And the daughter who had already buried me in her mind would learn that I was very much alive and in control of my own ending. The church smelled of lilies and old wood polish, the way churches always do for funerals. I sat in the front row, not because Vanessa had invited me, but because I was Colin's wife for 49 years, and no one could move me from that place. Vanessa arrived 10 minutes late, in a fitted black dress that screamed cocktail party more than mourning. She swept down the aisle like she owned the occasion, chin high, lips painted too red. When her eyes met mine, I saw the flicker of annoyance. She had probably hoped I would sit in the back, quiet, forgettable. But I've buried friends, siblings, and now my husband. I know where I belong. The service passed in a blur of hymns and murmured condolences. I let the words of the pastor wash over me, thinking not of heaven or hell, but of bank accounts and signatures. Every detail Harley and I had discussed replayed in my mind. Revocation forms filed, deeds updated, the new trust drafted with Maya as primary beneficiary. Each step was a small stone in a wall between myself and Vanessa. At the graveside, I watched the casket lower, earth hitting wood with hollow thuds. Vanessa dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief, though I knew she hadn't shed a single tear for her father while he was alive. The performance was for the neighbors, for the clients she'd dragged along in the hope of sympathy and networking. When it was over, we gathered in the church hall for coffee and sandwiches. That was where I had planned my moment. I waited until the noise of conversation settled, until people had plates in their hands and nowhere to hurry. Then I rose, slow but steady, the envelope clutched in my fingers. "Excuse me," I said, my voice carrying farther than I expected. Conversation stopped. Chairs scraped softly. Vanessa froze by the punch bowl, a smile half formed on her lips. "I won't keep you long," I continued. "But as Colin's wife and the mother of his only child, I have something to say. Not about him. He has his rest now. But about the living." I opened the envelope and unfolded the letter. The pages shook only a little in my hands. "This is my new will, signed yesterday in the office of Harley Briggs, attorney at law, and witnessed as required." I read it aloud, not for approval, but for clarity, so there can be no mistake later. The silence in my house after the funeral was almost comforting. I hung my black jacket on the hook by the door, set down my purse with the envelope still inside, and stood in the middle of the living room, listening to nothing but the tick of the wall clock. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I owed anyone an explanation. The phone rang that evening, right on cue. I didn't need to look to know who it was. Vanessa. I let it ring until the machine picked up. Her voice came through sharp and brittle. "Mother, what was that circus today? You humiliated me in front of everyone. This isn't final, you hear me? You can't just erase your own daughter. I'll be at the house tomorrow. We'll straighten this out." The click of disconnection followed. I stood still for a moment, then reached over and erased the message without listening again. In the quiet that followed, I walked to the closet and took out a small lockbox. Inside were the old documents Colin and I had once relied on. The power of attorney naming Vanessa, the original will that split things evenly, the folder of bank authorizations. All worthless now, but I held them in my hands like relics of my own gullibility. Then I fed them, one by one, into the shredder by my desk until nothing remained but thin strips. Saturday morning, I made tea and sat at the table with my notebook. A list was necessary now. Harley had prepared the new will, but there were notifications to send. The bank, the insurance company, the pension administrator. Each needed certified copies, and I would see that they received them. I wrote out each name carefully, underlining them. Order was a comfort. By noon, there was a knock on the door. I knew that knock, hard, insistent, meant to claim authority. I opened the door to Vanessa standing there, jaw tight, sunglasses pushed up on her head like a crown. Mother. She didn't wait for an invitation, just brushed past me into the living room. You've made a terrible mistake. Do you have any idea how this looks? Everyone's talking. Clients were at that funeral, people I do business with. I closed the door behind her and leaned on it. You made your mistake when you opened your mouth in my kitchen. I only followed through. Her head snapped toward me. You're overreacting. It was a bad day. People say things. Children say things when they're 6 years old and angry about bedtime, I said evenly. Not when they're nearly 50 and talking to the mother who raised them. Her lips parted, then closed again. She paced the room, her heels digging little dents into the carpet. You can't leave me with nothing. That's not fair. Fair? I let the word hang between us. Fair was when I paid your mortgage after your second divorce. Fair was when I covered Maya's tuition because you said you couldn't manage. Fair was every check I wrote while you smiled and promised to pay me back soon. You never did. Don't talk to me about fair. Her face tightened, fury and panic warring behind her eyes. Then at least keep it quiet, she hissed. You didn't need to announce it. You wanted to humiliate me. I shook my head. No, Vanessa. I wanted to make it clear that this time you don't get to twist the story. Everyone heard it from my lips, and that was the point. No rumors, no excuses, only truth. For a moment, she looked like a child again, cornered, caught. But then her chin lifted. I'll contest it, she said flatly. You won't, I answered, just as flat. Harley included a no contest clause. You fight, you lose everything, even the keepsakes you might have had. You'll get nothing but wasted legal bills. Her mouth opened in shock. You thought of that? I've had to think of everything, because you left me no choice. The silence between us stretched. At last, she grabbed her bag from the couch and stormed to the door. You'll regret this, she threw over her shoulder. I already regret raising a daughter who would wish me dead for convenience, I said quietly. But regret isn't the same as weakness. The door slammed. The house trembled for a moment, then settled again into its quiet rhythm. I returned to the kitchen, poured the last of the tea, and looked out the window at the garden Colin had once tended. A lone robin hopped among the weeds, unbothered. For the first time in decades, I realized I wasn't afraid of being alone. Sunday morning began with the sound of rain. It pattered against the windows, soft but steady, as if the world itself were urging me to stay indoors, keep still, and gather strength. I brewed coffee instead of tea, an old habit from years when Colin used to rise early for work, and sat at the kitchen table with my notebook open. One page already held Saturday's list of institutions. I added more. Utility companies, the title office, the safe deposit box at the bank. I had always been meticulous about papers, but now it was different. Each line I wrote was another thread cut from Vanessa's grasp. At 9 sharp, I called Richard at the bank. He answered on the first ring, professional, but curious. Mrs. Allison, I assume this is about the authorizations we discussed. Yes, I need written confirmation that all powers of attorney granted to Vanessa Allison are revoked, and I want all future correspondence sent directly to me or to my attorney, Harley Briggs. Understood. We'll prepare a notarized statement. And the transfers, those are suspended permanently? Permanently, I said, savoring the word. We arranged for me to visit the branch the next morning to sign. When I hung up, the house seemed to exhale with me. By noon, the phone began again. First Vanessa, ignored. Then her friend Caroline, a shrill voice insisting I consider the family image. Then, surprisingly, my neighbor Lydia from 2 doors down. Ruth, I don't mean to intrude, but Vanessa was at the store yesterday. She said you weren't well. She said you might be confused. I laughed, a short, bitter sound. Tell her I'm clear as crystal. Lydia paused, then lowered her voice. I thought so. She looked rattled. Whatever you said to her, it shook her. After I hung up, I felt the strangest surge of energy. I had been painted fragile, declining, ready for the nursing home. Yet here I was, making lists, calling banks, steadying my life with firmer hands than ever. In the afternoon, Maya came. She didn't text first, just knocked softly and peeked in when I opened the door. Her dark hair was damp from the rain, her eyes worried. Grandma, can I stay for a while? Of course. I ushered her inside, set a towel on the radiator for her coat. We sat in the living room, the lamp casting a warm circle against the gray day. I don't know what to say, she admitted. Mom's been storming around the house since yesterday, shouting about lawyers and betrayal, but I think you did the right thing. I looked at her carefully. Do you? Truly? This isn't easy for you. She met my eyes without flinching. I know Mom's used you. I've seen it all my life. The gifts, the checks, the way she only visits when she wants something. And I always hated it. But I never said anything. I didn't want to be caught in the middle. I reached across and squeezed her hand. You're not in the middle, darling. You're at the center. You're the only reason I didn't give up entirely. Her eyes shimmered. You don't owe me anything, Grandma. Not money, not houses, nothing. Just yourself. That simple sentence was worth more than every account balance I had written in my notebook. We spent the afternoon together, baking oatmeal cookies, just the two of us. Maya told me about her classes, her plans to apply for graduate school in the fall. I listened, nodded, laughed, truly laughed, for the first time in weeks. When she left after supper, the house didn't feel empty. It felt secure, like the walls themselves had absorbed her warmth. But later that evening, as I prepared for bed, headlights swept across the curtains. I peeked out. A car idled by the curb, engine running. I recognized it immediately. Vanessa's silver sedan. She didn't come to the door. She just sat there, watching. I closed the blinds, turned off the lights, and went upstairs. My heart should have raced, but instead it slowed. If she wanted to haunt me with her presence, let her. Tomorrow, the papers at the bank would be signed. Tomorrow, the locks could be changed. Tomorrow, I would move one step further away from her control. That night, I slept soundly. Monday morning, the sky was clear again, washed clean by yesterday's rain. I put on my navy coat, the one with deep pockets, and carried a neat folder under my arm. Inside were copies of Harley's drafts, my list of institutions, and the letter I had read at the funeral. I left the house earlier than usual, locking the door twice, and drove to the bank. The branch manager, Richard, greeted me at his office door. He was young enough to be my grandson, with kind eyes that darted nervously as he motioned me inside. On his desk lay a stack of papers already clipped in order. "We've prepared everything, Mrs. Allison. These documents formally revoke your daughter's power of attorney, suspend all linked transfers, and update our contact information to you alone. All we need are your signatures." I took the pen, my hand steady. Each signature was like cutting a knot that had bound me too tightly for too long. When the last page was signed, Richard exhaled as if he had been holding his breath. "You've been very thorough," he said quietly. "I've had to be," I replied. When you're told to hurry up and die, thoroughness becomes survival. He said nothing, but I saw his throat tighten. He slid a notarized copy into my folder. "You are now the sole controller of your accounts. No one else can touch them." I left the bank lighter. The sun warmed my face as I crossed the parking lot. For the first time in years, I felt not like someone's dependent mother, but like the woman I used to be, capable, decisive, certain. My next stop was Harley's office. His secretary, Miss Boyd, led me in at once. Harley was already at his desk, glasses perched on the tip of his nose, reviewing a draft. "Ruth?" he greeted warmly, rising to shake my hand. "I trust the bank went well?" "Better than well. It's done." "Excellent. Then let's move on." He spread the papers before me. "Here is your new will, complete with the no contest clause. And here is the trust agreement, placing your assets into a living trust with Maya as beneficiary. Funds for Blue Haven Hospice are allocated here, with percentages clearly marked." We spent an hour going line by line. Harley explained contingencies, what would happen if Maya predeceased me, how distributions would be handled, how the trustee, a professional firm, not family, would manage accounts. I initialed each page, signed where required. "Mrs. Allison," Harley said as he gathered the papers, "you've done something many people half your age don't do. You've taken control. Your wishes are unassailable now." I nodded, feeling the truth of his words settle deep inside. "Then I can sleep tonight?" When I left, my folder was heavier with stamped copies, but my shoulders lighter. At home, I brewed tea and sat by the window. The neighborhood looked ordinary. Children biking, a dog tugging its leash, the mailman strolling his route. Yet to me, everything looked sharper, brighter. I had stood in the way of my own erasure and said no more. Around 5, the phone rang. I nearly ignored it, but the caller ID read, "Maya." I answered at once. "Grandma, are you okay?" Her voice was cautious, like she wasn't sure what kind of storm she'd stepped into. "I'm better than okay, dear." "Everything's in order now," she exhaled audibly. "Good. Because Mom's furious. She called me this afternoon, ranting about betrayal and lawyers. She said you've been manipulated." I smiled. "If I'm manipulated, it's by common sense." Maya hesitated. "She's talking about coming back tonight." "Then let her come," I said calmly. "She'll find the locks changed." Indeed, that was my final errand of the day. By dusk, a locksmith had replaced every cylinder. New keys rested in my palm, cool and solid. Vanessa's copy was worthless now. That evening, as the kettle whistled, I wrote in my notebook again. Not a list this time, but a single sentence across the page. "My life is mine." When I closed the book, I felt something I had not in years: safety. Tuesday morning brought a knock at the door before I had even finished my toast. Not the sharp pounding of Vanessa. This was gentler, almost hesitant. When I opened the door, a tall man in a neat suit stood on the porch, rain still glistening on his shoulders. "Mrs. Allison?" he asked politely, holding up a leather portfolio. "I'm Daniel Kerrigan, attorney. Your daughter retained my services yesterday." I didn't flinch. Of course she did. Please come in. I won't have neighbors gossiping about lawyers on my porch. He followed me into the living room, setting his case neatly on the coffee table. I'll get straight to the point. Ms. Allison is upset. She believes decisions have been made under undue influence. She asked me to advise you to reconsider before formal proceedings are initiated. I sat in my armchair, hands folded in my lap. Undue influence? From whom? The only voices in this house are my own, and sometimes the robins in the garden. He shifted slightly, uncomfortable. Forgive me, I don't mean offense. It's common language in cases where wills are altered late in life. I see. And did Vanessa tell you what she said to me last week? That she wished I would hurry up and die? His eyes widened, and for a brief second, his professional mask slipped. No, she didn't mention that. Of course she didn't. But I mention it now so you know what kind of daughter you are representing. Daniel cleared his throat. Be that as it may, she is prepared to challenge the documents. I leaned forward. Then tell her this. Harley Briggs drew up my will. It includes a no contest clause. If she challenges it, she loses even the keepsakes she might have claimed. And the trust is irrevocable. No court in this state will unwind it. She can spend her money trying, but she won't touch mine. He looked at me a long moment, then slowly closed his portfolio. I'll relay your position. Do that, I said, rising. And next time, save yourself a trip. I may be old, Mr. Kerrigan, but I'm not defenseless. I showed him to the door. He left with the air of a man who had stepped into something he hadn't expected. That afternoon, Maya came by again, this time with groceries in her arms. You don't have to do that, I said as she stacked cans in the pantry. I want to, she replied. And besides, I don't trust Mom not to show up here unannounced. She already tried, I said. Through a lawyer. Maya froze, then let out a low whistle. She doesn't waste time. She's wasting her money, I corrected. We spent the evening cooking together, measuring, stirring, tasting. Maya's laughter filled the kitchen, softening the edges of the day. As we ate at the table, I told her about Colin's early years, how we bought this house, how much of ourselves was poured into every wall and nail. She listened intently, as if hearing these stories for the first time. Later, as she left, she hugged me tightly. Grandma, you're stronger than all of us put together. I smiled against her hair. Strength comes when it has to. Remember that. After she left, I locked the door with the new keys, checked the windows, and sat again at the table. The phone was quiet, but I knew it wouldn't last. Vanessa had been thwarted in public, in private, and now in law. She wouldn't accept defeat easily, but neither would I. When I went to bed that night, I slipped the folder of signed documents under my pillow. Paper can't protect a person physically, but I slept as if it could. Wednesday came with a sharp wind that rattled the shutters. I was in the garden, pulling weeds from the rose bed Colin had once tended, when I heard the crunch of tires on gravel. I stood slowly, brushing soil from my gloves, and saw Vanessa striding up the path with two people in tow, her husband, Howard, and a woman I didn't recognize. The woman carried a thick binder, and her sharp heels clicked against the stones. Mother, Vanessa said without greeting, we need to talk, as a family. I don't recall inviting company, I replied, but stepped aside. Fine, let's have it in the living room. Inside, they spread themselves across my sofa like they owned it. The unknown woman introduced herself briskly. I'm Claire Jennings, financial advisor. Vanessa asked me to review certain matters with you. I believe there are misunderstandings." "I doubt that," I said, sitting opposite with my back straight. "But go on." Claire opened her binder, showing charts and statements I had seen many times before. "You've made abrupt changes, revoking authorizations, suspending transfers. That can create chaos in family planning. We simply want to ensure your intentions are clear and not made under duress." "Chaos," I repeated, letting the words sink into the air. "Do you know what real chaos is, Ms. Jennings? Hearing your only child tell you to hurry up and die? That's chaos." Vanessa flushed scarlet. "Mother." "No, let her hear it," I cut in. "Let her see who she's working for. I have never been clearer in my life. My money, my house, my decisions. Not yours, not hers." Howard shifted uncomfortably, but Vanessa leaned forward, her voice sharp. "Do you realize what you're doing? You're turning your back on me, your own daughter, for a granddaughter who doesn't even need it." "Maya doesn't need it," I said softly. "But she deserves it, because she gives me something you never do. Respect." The silence was heavy, broken only by the clock ticking on the mantel. Claire cleared her throat. "Mrs. Allison, forgive me. But legally speaking—" "Legally speaking," I interrupted, "Harley Briggs has already filed every document. The trust is irrevocable. The will is final. If Vanessa contests, she forfeits all. So, unless you came here to enjoy my oatmeal cookies, I suggest you save your voices for someone else." Claire snapped her binder shut, clearly aware she had wasted her afternoon. Howard rose, muttering something about escalating too far. Vanessa remained seated, staring at me with eyes full of venom. "You'll regret this," she said quietly. "I already told you," I replied. "My only regret is raising a daughter who confuses love with money." That seemed to break something in her. She stood abruptly, knocking her handbag against the coffee table, and stormed toward the door. Claire followed, stiff with embarrassment. Howard gave me an almost apologetic nod before trailing after them. The house fell silent again when the door slammed. I sat very still, listening to the settling creaks of the wood. My hands were trembling, not with fear, but with release. Each confrontation was a peeling away, layer after layer of the weight I had carried. That evening, Maya called. "Grandma, Mom's furious. She says you humiliated her in front of some advisor." "She humiliated herself," I said. Maya hesitated. "Are you safe?" "Yes," I answered firmly. "Safer than I've been in years." When we hung up, I returned to the garden. The weeds were still there, stubborn as Vanessa herself. But I pulled them one by one, dropping them into the bin until only the roses stood, scarred by thorns, yes, but upright, alive, and blooming. Thursday morning, I woke earlier than usual. The house was still, the sky a pale gray through the curtains. I made tea and sat at the kitchen table, listening to the kettle pop as it cooled. For a long while, I just breathed. It struck me that silence, once so heavy with loneliness, had become a friend. The phone broke it. Harley's number. "Ruth," he said when I answered. "I thought you should know. Vanessa called me this morning. She demanded copies of your documents. I explained that, as your attorney, I represent you, not her. She threatened to file a petition in probate court." I felt a small, steady flame inside me, rather than fear. "And will she succeed?" "No," Harley replied. "The no contest clause makes it suicide. She can file, but the judge will strike it, and she'll walk away with nothing but legal bills. I just wanted you to be aware." "Thank you," I said. "Let her waste her money. Mine is no longer hers to spend." After the call, I wrote another line in my notebook. She is powerless where I am firm. By afternoon, I went into town. Groceries, a stop at the post office to send certified copies of the trust to the administrator, and finally, the hospice. The halls of Blue Haven were quiet, lined with photographs of smiling patients and volunteers. I met with the director, a calm woman named Teresa. "Mrs. Allison," she said warmly, "we received notification of your intended bequest. Please know, every dollar will directly support care for those who can't afford it." Her sincerity touched me. "Good," I replied. "It's what Colin would have wanted. He died in comfort here. I won't forget that." Leaving the hospice, I felt lighter still. My money, once siphoned and drained by endless demands, was now pointed toward something meaningful. When I returned home, Maya's car was already in the drive. She sat on the porch steps, hugging her knees, looking more like a child than a young woman about to graduate. "Grandma," she said as I approached, "Mom's unraveling. She screamed at me this morning, said I was conspiring with you. She even threw a vase. I don't recognize her anymore." I sat beside her, the wood warm under us. "She's angry because her power is gone. For years, she held my purse strings. Now she can't." Maya turned her face toward me, eyes brimming. "Promise me you won't give in, no matter what she says." I put an arm around her shoulders. "Darling, I promise. I've given in for too many years. That part of me is gone." We sat together until the sun dipped low, the street lamps flickering on one by one. For a moment, I let myself rest my cheek against her hair. In that quiet, I felt something almost forgotten. Peace. Later, after Maya left, the phone rang again. "Vanessa." I didn't answer, but the voicemail filled the room. "You think you've won, Mother? You think you can cut me out like I'm nothing? You've made a fool of me, and I won't forget it. Everyone's laughing behind my back. You'll regret this. I swear you will." I erased it, the same way I had erased all the others. That night, before bed, I stood at the window looking out at the garden. The roses I'd cleared were catching the moonlight, their petals glowing faintly. I whispered aloud, though no one could hear. I regret nothing. And for the first time in a long while, I believed it. Friday morning arrived cool and bright, the kind of day Colin used to call a clean slate. I carried my tea to the porch and let the sun warm my face. Birds darted through the hedges, unconcerned with human quarrels. For a moment, I almost believed life could be simple again. Then came the sound of tires crunching on gravel. A black SUV pulled up, larger and shinier than anything that belonged on our quiet street. Vanessa stepped out, sunglasses on, lips painted crimson, the kind of entrance she always choreographed. Behind her trailed Howard, looking weary, and Maya, unexpected, anxious, arms crossed tightly against her chest. "Mother," Vanessa said, striding toward me, "we're settling this today." Maya's eyes met mine briefly, silently apologizing. I rose slowly, steady in my chair. "Come in then, but understand. You won't like what you hear." Inside, Vanessa planted herself in the center of the living room as if it were a courtroom. "Enough games. I've spoken to lawyers. I've spoken to advisors. They all say the same thing. You've been manipulated. Maya has poisoned you against me." I raised an eyebrow. "Maya?" "Yes, her." Vanessa jabbed a finger toward her daughter. "She's turned you against your own blood, and you—" She turned to Maya. "You should be ashamed, conspiring with her. You're just waiting for her to die so you can cash in." Maya recoiled, but I stepped between them, my voice calm but sharp. "Don't you dare put that filth in this house. Maya is the only one who visits me without her hand out, the only one who calls to ask how I'm feeling, not what I can give. She has earned nothing from me but love. What she inherits is my decision, not yours." Vanessa's face twisted, ugly in a way that had nothing to do with age. "You'll regret this. Everyone will see what kind of woman you really are. Bitter, vengeful, manipulated by a child." Howard cleared his throat timidly. "Vanessa, maybe we should—" "Be quiet," she snapped, silencing him. I took a step forward. "Listen carefully, Vanessa. The house, the accounts, everything are now in a trust. Your name is nowhere. If you contest it, you get nothing. If you harass me further, you risk losing even the chance at reconciliation. And if you so much as raise your voice at Maya again, you'll find yourself unwelcome at my door for good." Maya's breath caught behind me, but I didn't falter. "You've mistaken my silence all these years for weakness," I continued. "But silence was love, not weakness. Silence was hope. Now it's over." The room hung heavy with the weight of it. Vanessa's mouth opened, then closed. For the first time, I saw hesitation, thin cracks in her armor. Howard placed a tentative hand on her arm. "Vanessa, let's go." She jerked away but didn't speak. With a dramatic whirl, she strode out the door, Howard trailing dutifully. The SUV engine roared to life, then faded down the street. Maya remained, trembling. "Grandma, I'm so sorry. I didn't know she would—" I turned to her, gently cupping her face. "Stop apologizing. None of this is your fault. You're the one bright thing in all of it. Never forget that." Her eyes filled, but she nodded. We sat together after they left. The house finally quiet again. I brewed tea, and we sipped in silence until her hands stopped shaking. "Grandma," she said finally, "I don't want your money. I just want you." I smiled faintly. "And that's why you'll have both." That evening, after she left, I sat by the window, watching the sky darken. The roses glowed faintly in the moonlight again, sturdy despite the weeds that had once choked them. Vanessa's threats would not end overnight. I knew her too well. But the line was drawn, firm and visible. And for the first time, I felt sure it would hold. I whispered to the empty room, as if Colin might still be listening. "She won't break me. Not now. Not ever." And the silence that answered was not emptiness, but agreement. Saturday morning, the doorbell rang before I'd even finished my tea. I moved carefully down the hall, expecting another confrontation. But when I opened the door, it wasn't Vanessa. A courier stood on the porch, holding a thick envelope. "Delivery for Mrs. Ruth Allison. Requires signature." I signed, closed the door, and carried it to the table. The return address read Allison and Kerrigan, attorneys at law. My stomach tightened, though not from fear. I slid it open with Colin's old letter opener. Inside, a formal notice. Vanessa intended to file in probate court, alleging undue influence, incapacity, and fraud. Legal words strung together like barbed wire. At the bottom, Daniel Kerrigan's signature, though I could imagine his discomfort as he signed. I read it twice, then folded it neatly and set it aside. I didn't call Harley immediately. Instead, I made another cup of tea. The steam rising from the cup steadied me. When I finally rang Harley, he wasn't surprised. "I expected this," he said. "It's posturing. The no contest clause will shut it down quickly." "She'll waste money she doesn't have," I murmured, She'll also expose herself, he replied. The court will see her motives clearly. Sometimes sunlight is the best disinfectant. I thanked him and hung up. By afternoon, Maya came by. She carried a bag of groceries again, always thoughtful, always more than I needed. When she saw the envelope on the table, she froze. Is that from Mom? Yes. I pushed it toward her. Legal bluster. She read silently, her face paling. Grandma, I'm so sorry. She's dragging this into court. She'll make a scene. She's been making scenes all her life, I said calmly. This one will simply have an audience. Maya sat heavily at the table. She's destroying herself. She already has, I answered gently. That evening, I wrote another entry in my notebook. Let her fight shadows. I will stand in the light. 2 days later, the hearing notice arrived. Preliminary review scheduled for the following month. Harley called again, reassuring me it would be brief, routine, dismissed almost at once. Still, I felt the weight of it. Courtrooms carry echoes of finality. In preparation, Harley suggested I gather supporting documents, medical records proving my capacity, letters from neighbors, even banking logs showing I had managed affairs without issue. I spent the next days compiling them, each paper another brick in the wall of certainty. One afternoon, Lydia from next door stopped by with banana bread. When I mentioned the case, she snorted. Vanessa? Please. I saw you walking to church last week straighter than half the young folks. If anyone's confused, it isn't you. I laughed, a sound that surprised us both. The following weekend, Maya asked me to meet her for coffee downtown. We sat by the cafe window, sunlight glinting off her hair. She looked nervous. Grandma, she said softly, I've been offered an internship in Chicago. It's a big opportunity, but I don't want to leave you with all this going on. I reached across, covering her hand with mine. Darling, you must go. Live your life. Don't anchor yourself to my battles. I'm stronger than you think. Her eyes filled, but she nodded slowly. You really mean that? Of course. My fight is mine. Your future is yours. When we parted, I watched her walk down the street, her stride confident despite the weight of her decision. Pride swelled in me. She was the proof that my love had not been wasted. That night, alone again in the quiet house, I took the notice of Vanessa's filing from the drawer and placed it beneath Colin's photograph on the mantel. His calm eyes seemed to watch me from across the years. She thinks she'll win, I whispered, but we both know better. The house settled around me, warm and still. I slept deeply, untroubled, as if the very walls had wrapped themselves around me in protection. The days leading up to the hearing passed in a strange mixture of calm and storm. Calm inside my house, tea in the mornings, roses in the evenings, a quiet rhythm I hadn't known in years. Storm in the wider world, Vanessa calling neighbors, spreading rumors, painting herself as the victim of a manipulative mother and an ungrateful daughter. Lydia stopped by one afternoon with her knitting basket. She told folks at the market that you're senile, she said, lowering her voice. I smiled wryly. Senile people don't rewrite wills and file trusts in proper legal order. Lydia chuckled. Exactly what I told her. She didn't like that. The gossip didn't touch me as sharply as it once might have. Words are only daggers if you let them pierce. On Tuesday, Harley came by in person, thick file under his arm. We sat at the dining room table, papers spread between us. This, he said, tapping one document, is your medical evaluation, signed by Dr. Ramirez last week. It states plainly that you're competent, alert, and fully capable of managing your affairs. And this, he continued, sliding another paper forward, is the trust deed, stamped by the county clerk. Irrevocable. Vanessa cannot unwind it. He leaned back, adjusting his glasses. Ruth, the judge will dismiss her claim in minutes, but we'll let her speak. Let her show her hand. Sometimes the best victory is letting your opponent dig their own hole. I nodded, absorbing his calm certainty. Then I'll be there, I said simply. The night before the hearing, Maya stayed over. She insisted, saying she didn't want me to go alone in the morning. We made soup together, sat on the porch as the sky darkened, and talked about nothing important. Her classes, a book I was reading, the stubborn rabbit that kept nibbling my lettuce. At one point, she grew quiet. "Grandma," she said softly, "what if the judge listens to her? What if they believe her?" I took her hand, squeezing it gently. "Maya, truth stands even if no one claps for it. I've lived long enough to know that. We will walk into that courtroom, and we will walk out with our dignity intact, no matter what she says." Her shoulders eased, and she leaned her head against mine. For a moment, I felt Colin's absence keenly. He would have been proud of this granddaughter, proud of me for finding my voice. Morning came clear and bright. We drove downtown together, Harley meeting us at the courthouse steps. Vanessa was already there, flanked by Howard and Daniel Kerrigan. She looked sharp, dressed in navy silk, her expression icy. When her eyes met mine, I saw no grief, no love, only hunger. Inside, the courtroom was modest, the judge a stern woman with steel-gray hair. We took our seats. Vanessa launched into her claim, voice trembling with false indignation. "My mother has been manipulated by my daughter. She was not in her right mind when she changed her will. This is elder abuse, plain and simple." I listened without interruption, my hands folded neatly in my lap. When she finished, Harley stood and presented the documents. Medical evaluations, notarized trust, no contest clause. His voice was calm, measured, unshakable. The judge skimmed the papers, then peered over her glasses at Vanessa. "Ms. Allison, these documents are in perfect order. Your mother's capacity is certified. The trust is irrevocable. And this clause," she tapped the page, "makes clear that contesting forfeits your claim. I strongly advise you to withdraw before you destroy your standing entirely." Vanessa's face blanched. She sputtered something about lies, manipulation, betrayal, but the judge's gavel cut her short. "Case dismissed, costs borne by petitioner." The sound of the gavel echoed like thunder. Maya reached for my hand under the table, squeezing tight. Harley gave me the faintest nod, his mouth curved in a small, satisfied smile. I rose slowly, steady on my feet, and looked at Vanessa one last time. She stared back, her fury barely contained, her voice choked. "This isn't over," she hissed. But it was. For me, it was the beginning of peace. The courthouse doors swung open behind us, spilling us into the bright morning air. The city sounds carried on as if nothing had happened. Buses rumbling, people rushing, pigeons pecking at crumbs. Yet for me, the world felt different. Lighter. Clearer. Maya slipped her arm through mine as we walked down the steps. "You were incredible, Grandma." "I was only honest," I replied. "The rest took care of itself." Harley left us at the corner, promising to file the final paperwork by afternoon. "Go home, Ruth," he said kindly. "Have tea, read a book. This chapter is finished." I believed him. Back at the house, I changed into my gardening clothes. The roses needed pruning again, and nothing restores a soul quite like dirt under the fingernails. Maya insisted on helping, though she complained the thorns seemed to aim for her on purpose. As we worked, she asked, "What happens now? Will Mom just disappear?" I clipped a branch carefully. "No, Vanessa doesn't disappear. She sulks, she plots, she stirs trouble. But the law has spoken. She'll have to live with it." "And you?" I paused, inhaling the scent of crushed leaves. "I'll live with freedom. That's enough for me." By evening, Maya went home, promising to check in again tomorrow. The house fell silent once more, but this time the silence was not heavy. It was companionable, like an old friend sitting quietly nearby. I brewed tea and opened my notebook. Across a blank page, I wrote, "The battle is done. The war was for dignity, and I won." I closed the book and smiled. The next morning, however, the storm arrived again. Vanessa. She appeared on my porch unannounced, face pale, eyes rimmed red. No silk dress today, just a cardigan and jeans. For the first time in months, she looked less like a predator and more like the child I once raised. "Mother," she said softly, "may I come in?" I hesitated. Every instinct told me to close the door. Yet something in her voice was unfamiliar, hoarse, almost pleading. I stepped aside. Inside, she perched on the edge of the sofa, hands twisting in her lap. For a long while, she said nothing. Then, "I lost. I know that. I don't understand why you hate me." I sat across from her, steady. "I don't hate you, Vanessa. I never have. I hate what you've become. Greedy, careless, cruel with your words. You asked me to die as if I were nothing more than a burden. How do you expect me to respond?" Tears filled her eyes, though I couldn't tell if they were real or staged. "I was angry. I was stupid. But you've shut me out completely. I don't know how to fix it." I leaned forward, voice low but firm. "You fix it by respecting me while I'm alive. Not by clawing at what you think you're owed after I'm gone. If you want a place in my life, it will be earned by honesty and kindness, not entitlement." She stared at me, searching my face for softness. Finding none, she looked away. "I don't know if I can do that." "Then you'll stay outside the circle of my life," I said simply. "The door isn't locked, but you must walk through it with clean hands." We sat in silence. Finally, she rose, brushing at her eyes. "I'll think about it," she muttered, and left without another word. The house grew still again. I sat a long time, staring at the indent her body had left on the sofa cushion. For the first time, I didn't feel anger, only a deep, weary sadness. That night, I lit a single candle on the mantel beside Colin's photo. Its flame flickered gently, casting shadows across the room. "She came back," I whispered, "not to make peace yet, but maybe to begin." The flame wavered, steadying itself again. So did I. Sunday dawned clear, sunlight spilling across the kitchen tiles. I sat with my tea and listened to the neighborhood waking up. Lawnmowers buzzing, children's shouts drifting from down the street. Ordinary sounds, but they carried a sweetness I hadn't felt in a long time. I thought about Vanessa's visit, her eyes rimmed with tears, her words uncertain. It wasn't forgiveness she asked for, she didn't know how, but perhaps it was the first small crack in her armor. I didn't fool myself. Patterns forged over decades don't dissolve overnight. Still, cracks let the light in. By late morning, I drove to Blue Haven Hospice. Teresa greeted me warmly, her hand firm around mine. "Mrs. Allison, we've finalized the paperwork. Your gift will establish a new patient wing, Allison Hall. It will bear your family's name." "Allison," I repeated softly. The same name Vanessa carried, but here it would stand for compassion, not greed. Walking the halls afterward, I saw patients resting quietly, nurses moving with practiced gentleness. I paused outside one room where an old man lay with his eyes closed, his daughter stroking his hand. The sight made my throat ache, not with jealousy, but with recognition. That had been Colin in me once, and though our marriage ended long before his last breath, the care he received here had been real, human, good. My gift would ensure more such endings. When I returned home, Maya was waiting on the porch. She jumped up when she saw me. "Grandma, you'll never believe what Mom did." I braced myself. "What now?" "She called me this morning. She apologized, sort of. She said she's reconsidering her behavior." "That's as close as she gets to sorry." I raised my brows. "And what did you say?" "I told her words are cheap, actions matter." Maya's jaw set, so much like mine when I was her age. "I'm not going to let her drag me into her schemes anymore." Pride swelled in me. "Good. You've learned faster than I did." We went inside, baked a batch of shortbread, and sat eating it warm from the oven. Maya laughed when the sugar dusted her sweater. For a few hours, life felt as sweet as the cookies we shared. That evening, after Maya left, I walked into the garden. The roses stood tall, buds opening to the late spring sun. I clipped a single bloom, crimson and fragrant, and placed it in a vase on the mantel beside Colin's picture. "I've done it," I whispered. "I've built something stronger than silence. Even if Vanessa never changes, even if she never walks through that door with clean hands, I've left behind a truth she can't erase. My life is mine, my dignity is mine, and Maya will carry the best of us forward." I sat back in my chair, the room glowing in the soft light of dusk. My body was tired, but my heart beat steady. For the first time in many years, I wasn't waiting. For calls, for visits, for scraps of affection. I wasn't paying rent on love that never came. I was simply living. And that, I realized, was victory enough. The following week passed without incident. No phone calls from Vanessa, no surprise visits, no legal envelopes. The quiet unnerved me at first. I had grown used to her shadow at my door. But soon, the stillness became a balm. I filled my days with small victories. Morning walks to the park. Afternoons pruning the roses and coaxing the lilies back to life. Evenings with books I had once bought but never opened, always interrupted by Vanessa's demands. Now, with no interruptions, I let myself sink into their pages. But midweek, she came again. Not in a storm of silk and heels, but alone, walking up the path with hesitant steps. She carried nothing but a small paper bag, folded at the top. "Mother," she said, stopping at the porch steps. "May I come in?" I studied her for a moment. Her shoulders slumped, her eyes tired. Not the Vanessa who barked orders and flung accusations. This was a woman stripped bare, if only for a moment. I stepped aside. Inside, she set the bag on the coffee table. I brought muffins, blueberry. I baked them. I couldn't remember the last time she'd baked anything. "Sit down," I said simply. She did, perching on the edge of the sofa. Silence stretched between us until she broke it. "I don't know how to start. I've been angry for so long. Angry at Dad. Angry at the world. Angry at you. I thought money would fix it, that control would fix it. But it hasn't. It's just made me worse." Her hands trembled as she smoothed her jeans. "When you read me out of the will, I felt erased. Like I didn't matter. But then I realized I'd been erasing you for years, pretending your feelings didn't matter, only your checkbook." I watched her carefully. "Vanessa, I don't need muffins or apologies whispered like confessions. I need respect. I need truth. If you want a place in my life, you must come without clause." Tears welled in her eyes. "I don't know if I can change that much." "Then you'll stay outside," I said gently. "But if you try, truly try, there's a door open, not to my accounts, to my heart." For a long moment she sat in silence. Then she nodded slowly, rising to her feet. "I'll try," she whispered. "That's all I can promise." She left quietly, without slamming doors. I sat alone again, staring at the bag of muffins. I didn't eat them, not yet, but I didn't throw them away either. That night, Maya called. "Grandma, Mom came by here too. She seemed different, calmer. She even asked about my classes." "People can surprise you," I said softly, "but don't lower your guard. Change is slow." "I know," Maya replied, "but maybe there's hope." After we hung up, I sat in my armchair, the roses glowing faintly in the lamplight. Hope. I hadn't dared to use that word in a long time, but maybe, just maybe, it wasn't foolish to let a sliver of it in. The last weeks of spring unfolded gently, like the turning of a page I had been waiting years to read. The garden filled with blooms, the air with birdsong. Life was no longer measured in the number of times Vanessa called or the number of checks I wrote. It was measured in mornings of peace, afternoons of purpose, evenings of quiet dignity. Vanessa visited again, twice. Not with fury, not with lawyers, but with small gestures. Once, she brought soup she claimed to have made herself. Another time, she brought an old photo album I thought had been lost. We sat together leafing through its pages, the pictures of her as a child, Colin laughing in the background, me with hair still dark and eyes still hopeful. "I forgot this," she murmured, tracing her finger over a picture of her 8th birthday, balloons tied to the porch railing. "You forgot a lot," I said gently, and she nodded. There was no full reconciliation, not yet. Maybe not ever. But there was the faintest outline of possibility, and for now, that was enough. Maya remained my anchor. She visited often, bringing news of her internship applications, bubbling with energy about a world that lay wide open before her. When she spoke of moving to Chicago, her eyes shone with excitement. "Grandma, I'll call every week. I'll visit whenever I can." "You don't need to promise me anything," I told her. "Go live your life. That's the best gift you can give me." She hugged me tightly. "You're the strongest person I know." I smiled, though my throat tightened. "Strength isn't a choice, darling. It's what's left when all the choices are gone. Remember that." One quiet Sunday evening, I set the table for one. A simple meal, bread, cheese, a few slices of apple. I lit a candle anyway, because dignity doesn't depend on company. As I ate, I thought of all the women like me, tucked away in their houses, hearts heavy with disappointment, cupboards filled with receipts of sacrifices no one remembered. To them I would say, "You are not just wallets or stepping stones. You are whole lives, rich with stories and choices, and it is never too late to take them back." I thought of Vanessa's words, "Hurry up and die already." They had cut me once, deep as any knife. But now those words no longer bound me. I had answered them not with bitterness, but with action. I had cut the strings that tied me like a puppet, and in doing so, I had found my own breath again. When I finished supper, I carried my notebook to the porch. The final page was blank, waiting. I wrote slowly, firmly. I was not erased. I stood. I chose. I remained mine until the end. I closed the book and placed it beside Colin's picture on the mantel, the roses blooming in their vase. To you who have listened to my story, I will say one last thing. If you ever feel your worth measured only in what you give, stop. If you are treated as a burden instead of a human being, speak. And if anyone dares to tell you to hurry up and die, remember, life is yours until your very last breath. So live it. And if my story has touched you, share it. Let another woman know she is not alone. Because silence is how we are erased. And truth is how we return.